The unexpected meeting. The emergency lights inside the spaceship flashed red. Sirens blared through the control room as the ship spun wildly in space. Ethan Carter, a simple cargo pilot, gritted his teeth, trying to regain control. But it was useless. His ship was going down. The planet below looked strange. Blue mountains, golden forests, and a massive palace shining like a jewel in the center of a vast city. Ethan didn't have time to admire it. His ship was falling straight toward it. "Come on, work with me," he shouted, pulling every lever, pressing every button. But the ship wasn't listening. A final jolt sent him flying against the control panel, and everything went black. A strange awakening. Ethan woke up to the soft feeling of silk beneath him. His head pounded, and his vision was blurry. Where was he? This wasn't his ship. His fingers touched something smooth and warm, golden sheets, far too luxurious for a stranded pilot. His senses sharpened. He was lying on a bed inside a grand hall, surrounded by towering pillars and glowing crystals. Strange music played in the distance, and the air smelled of exotic flowers. Before he could sit up, a deep voice rang out. "He wakes." Ethan turned his head and saw them. Tall alien figures, dressed in shimmering robes, their eyes glowing like stars. The leader, an old man with silver tattoos on his face, studied Ethan carefully. "He is human." The old man sounded surprised, almost disappointed. Ethan cleared his throat. Hi. Silence. Then the crowd whispered in hushed voices, looking at him as if he had just insulted their gods. A new voice cut through the noise, strong, commanding, and unmistakably female. "Leave us." The crowd obeyed instantly, parting like water. And that's when she stepped forward. The Empress. She was tall, with deep violet skin, silver hair cascading down her back, and golden eyes that burned like the sun. She moved with the grace of a queen, dressed in robes adorned with intricate symbols. A crown of energy floated above her head, shifting like a living flame. Ethan felt his throat go dry. She was stunning and terrifying. She studied him for a moment, then spoke. "You crashed into my palace." Ethan sat up quickly, wincing. "Yeah, sorry about that. I had a slight technical issue." The Empress tilted her head. "You are human." "That's what they tell me," Ethan said, forcing a nervous chuckle. For a long moment, she just stared at him. Then, to his surprise, she smiled. It was small, almost unreadable, but it was there. "A rare sight," she murmured. Ethan had no idea what that meant, but he didn't have time to ask. The old man with silver tattoos returned, carrying a glowing tablet. He handed it to the Empress, bowing deeply. She took it and glanced at the screen, then looked back at Ethan with a new expression, one he couldn't quite place. "This is unexpected," she said. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "Yeah, I get that a lot." The Empress took a step closer. Ethan had to resist the urge to step back. There was something powerful about her presence, like standing too close to a storm. Then she spoke words that changed everything. In our culture, kneeling before the Empress and offering words of honor is considered a sacred proposal. Ethan blinked. "A what?" The old man cleared his throat. "A marriage proposal. Human." Ethan's heart stopped. Wait. What? I didn't." He ran his hands through his hair, trying to think. "Hold on, you think I—" No, this is a misunderstanding. I wasn't proposing. I was just—" "It is done," the Empress interrupted. Ethan's stomach dropped. "Done? What did she mean by done?" "I accept," she continued, her golden eyes locked onto his. Ethan's brain short-circuited. You what?" "I accept your proposal. Human." His mouth opened. Nothing came out. His heart was pounding so hard, he thought it might explode. Was this a dream? A prank? A hallucination from the crash? The old man stepped forward. The sacred bond is sealed. You are now the Empress's chosen mate. Ethan's world spun. I think I need to sit down. The Empress smirked. You already are. Ethan groaned. He was doomed. The turning point. Before Ethan could protest further, the doors burst open. A tall alien warrior in golden armor stormed in. His sharp eyes glared at Ethan like a predator sizing up its prey. My Empress, the warrior said, his voice tight with anger. This, human. Surely you do not mean to honor this mistake. Ethan raised a finger. Hey, I'm right here, man. The Empress did not waver. There is no mistake, she said. He is mine. Ethan choked. Wait, what? The warrior clenched his fists. This is madness. The Empress's golden gaze darkened. Do you question my will, General? The tension in the room became suffocating. Ethan had no idea what was happening. 1 minute, he was crashing his ship. The next, he was accidentally engaged to an alien Empress. And now, he might have just made a powerful enemy. What had he gotten himself into? The Empress's response. Ethan sat frozen, staring at the Empress. His mind struggled to process what had just happened. He had accidentally proposed to an alien Empress, and she had accepted. This had to be a joke. Some kind of weird cultural misunderstanding. He cleared his throat. But, Your Majesty, I think there's been a mistake. The Empress tilted her head slightly, watching him like a predator studying its prey. A mistake. Ethan forced an awkward laugh. Yeah, see, where I come from. Proposing is a bit different. You know, it usually involves, knowing the person first. Dating? Maybe not crash-landing into their palace. The old man with silver tattoos, who had declared the marriage moments ago, frowned deeply. Are you rejecting the Empress? Ethan's heart skipped a beat. The room fell silent. Every alien in the hall was now staring at him, their glowing eyes unreadable. Even the warrior, the one who had stormed in earlier, seemed tense, like he was just waiting for an excuse to cut Ethan in half. Ethan swallowed hard. I'm just saying, maybe we should slow down. The Empress didn't look offended. If anything, she looked amused. She took a slow step forward, and Ethan had to fight the instinct to step back. Tell me, human, she said, her golden gaze never leaving his. On your world, if someone offers a hand in marriage, is it not a sign of respect? Well, yeah, but. And if the other accepts, does it not mean they see something worthy in their partner? Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. I mean, technically, but. Then there is no mistake. Ethan felt like banging his head against a wall. No, you don't get it. I didn't mean to. You knelt before me. That was because I was dizzy. You spoke words of honor. I was just trying to be polite. The Empress smiled slightly. And now you are mine. Ethan opened his mouth, but no words came out. He was doomed. A dangerous situation. Before Ethan could argue more, the warrior in golden armor stepped forward aggressively. His sharp eyes burned with fury. This is an insult, the warrior growled. A weak, primitive human cannot be the Empress's mate. Ethan threw up his hands. Finally, someone who gets it. The warrior glared at him. Silence, human. I was speaking to my Empress. Ethan clamped his mouth shut. The Empress remained calm, completely unfazed by the warrior's anger. She turned to him with an almost bored expression. General Varric, she said smoothly, are you questioning my choice? Varric's jaw tightened. I am questioning his worth. Ethan pointed at himself. Okay, yeah, see. He makes a good point. The Empress ignored him. Her eyes remained locked onto the warriors. If he is unworthy, she said, then prove it. Varric's expression darkened. You wish for a test. Ethan blinked. Wait. What? The Empress nodded. A test of worthiness. Oh, this was bad. This was very, very bad. Ethan did not like the sound of this at all. The first trial. Before Ethan could protest, the Empress raised a hand, and the air shifted. The glowing crystals in the walls dimmed, and suddenly, a massive circular arena appeared in the center of the hall. The floor was made of smooth obsidian, covered in strange symbols that pulsed with energy. Ethan stared. What is happening? Varric smirked. Your first trial. Ethan's stomach dropped. First, the Empress turned to him. If you wish to dispute your bond, you must prove you are not worthy. Ethan raised a finger. I could just tell you I'm not worthy. Varric cracked his knuckles. Words mean nothing. Actions do. Ethan gulped. Two guards suddenly grabbed him and pulled him toward the arena. Okay, hold on. I never agreed to. Too late. The moment his feet touched the arena floor, a massive force field surrounded them. The air crackled with energy. Ethan turned to see Varric stepping inside, holding a curved blade that glowed red. The Empress sat on her throne, watching with great interest. This is ridiculous, Ethan muttered. I'm just a pilot. I don't do fights. I don't do trials. And I sure as hell don't do. A loud gong rang through the air. Varric lunged. Ethan's eyes went wide. Oh crap, the training begins. Ethan groaned, his entire body aching. He lay sprawled on the smooth obsidian floor of the royal arena, gasping for air. The trial had been nothing short of a public beating. Varric, the golden-armored general, stood over him, completely unarmed. The curved blade in his hand hummed with energy, but he hadn't even needed to use it. Ethan had dodged, tripped, stumbled, and, at one point, accidentally punched himself in the face trying to throw a clumsy swing. Now, as he lay there, he realized two things. He was very bad at fighting. He was going to die here. Varric smirked. You are weak, human. You are not worthy of our Empress. Ethan coughed. Yeah, I was trying to tell you that. The Empress, sitting on her throne, watched silently, her golden eyes unreadable. Then she stood. The crowd fell silent instantly. She descended the steps, her violet robes flowing like liquid metal. When she reached Ethan, she crouched down beside him. Her gaze pierced through him, as if she were looking not at his body, but at something deeper. Then she spoke. You have no training. Ethan squinted. Wow, you think? The Empress's lips twitched. Was that almost a smile? She stood tall once more and turned to Varric. Enough. Varric's jaw tightened, but he bowed deeply. As you command, my Empress. She turned back to Ethan. You are mine now. That means you must be strong. You will begin your training tomorrow. Ethan frowned. Training? Training for what? She met his eyes. To become my consort. His heart skipped a beat. Wait, you're serious. Her golden gaze burned with intensity. You do not wish to be weak, do you? Ethan hesitated. He wanted to scream, yes, I do, and find the fastest way out of this mess. But the way she looked at him, it wasn't mockery. It wasn't even pity. It was expectation, as if she believed he could be more. Ethan swallowed hard. I don't really have a choice, do I? The Empress smiled slightly. No, training with the enemy. Ethan barely had time to breathe before he was thrown straight into training the next morning. Unfortunately, his instructor was none other than General Varric. The man was not happy about it. You are an embarrassment, Varric muttered, tossing Ethan a heavy wooden staff. But the Empress has commanded me to make you strong, and so I will. Ethan caught the staff and immediately dropped it. Okay, yeah, this is gonna be a problem. Varric sighed, already regretting his life choices. The training took place in a massive open-air courtyard, surrounded by golden trees and floating crystals that pulsed with energy. Other warriors trained around them, all far more impressive than Ethan could ever hope to be. Ethan picked up the staff again, gripping it tightly. Okay, what's first? Varric's response was a swift strike to Ethan's ribs. Ethan collapsed instantly. "Oh my God! What is the for?" Varric crossed his arms. "That was a lesson." "Lesson in what?" "Internal bleeding." Varric sighed. "You have no form, no balance, no discipline. Before you can fight, you must learn control." Ethan groaned, rubbing his ribs. "Can I learn control without getting my bones shattered?" Varric smirked. "No." Ethan hated this man. The Empress watches. Ethan spent hours in the training courtyard. Varric made him do things he was sure were illegal in most civilized worlds, holding painful stances, dodging swinging blades, balancing on narrow beams. By the end of it, Ethan was soaked in sweat, bruised, and questioning all his life choices. Then he saw her. The Empress stood on a high balcony, watching him. She didn't say anything. She didn't smile. She just observed. And for some reason, that made Ethan want to keep going. He had no idea why. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was the fact that he really didn't want Varric to win. Or maybe, just maybe, he didn't like the idea of being the weakest person in the room. Ethan gritted his teeth, picked up the staff again, and faced Varric. "Let's go again." Varric raised an eyebrow. "You will lose." Ethan shrugged. "Yeah, probably, but not without a fight." A flicker of something unreadable passed over the Empress's face, and for the first time, Varric actually looked impressed. A hidden truth. That night, Ethan collapsed into his bed, exhausted beyond words. His muscles screamed, his mind raced, and his entire body ached in places he didn't know existed. But as he lay there, staring at the ceiling, a realization hit him like a meteor. The Empress hadn't chosen him by accident. There was a reason for all this. A reason she was watching him. A reason she wasn't allowing him to leave. Ethan didn't know what it was yet. But one thing was certain, he was going to find out. And when he did, everything would change. A hidden secret. Ethan wasn't sleeping. He was exhausted, his body aching from the brutal training. But his mind refused to rest. The Empress had chosen him. Why? It wasn't just because of some cultural misunderstanding. She could have easily dismissed him, laughed off the proposal, and sent him back to wherever lost humans belonged. But she didn't. Instead, she was watching him, testing him, pushing him. Ethan had never been the type to question things too deeply. He had always gone with the flow, taking life one step at a time. But now he needed answers. A midnight visit. The palace halls were eerily quiet at night. Ethan moved carefully, his bruised body protesting every step. He wasn't supposed to be out of his chambers, but curiosity gnawed at him. If he wanted to survive this insane situation, he needed to understand what was really going on. And there was only one place that might have the answers. The Empress's private chamber. Terrible idea. Absolutely. But Ethan had already learned that playing it safe didn't get him anywhere. The forbidden room. The doors to the Empress's chamber were massive, made of some kind of shimmering metal that pulsed softly in the dark. Ethan hesitated. What if she was inside? What if the guards caught him? What if this was the worst decision of his life? He answered that last question immediately. It probably was. But he was already here, and there was no turning back. Taking a deep breath, Ethan pushed the doors open. The Empress's secret. The chamber was not what he expected. He had imagined something grand, lavish, full of treasures fit for a ruler. But instead, the room was simple, almost empty. The only light came from a massive floating crystal in the center, casting a soft blue glow over the walls. Strange symbols were carved into the floor, glowing faintly with energy. And then, Ethan saw it, a massive mural on the far wall. It depicted a scene of war, destruction, and a human. Ethan stepped closer, his pulse racing. The figure in the mural was clearly human, a man standing beside the Empress, holding a blade of pure light. He looked just like Ethan. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. What the hell? This is why you are here. Ethan spun around. The Empress stood in the doorway, her golden eyes glowing in the dim light. Ethan's heart nearly exploded. Oh, hi. She didn't look angry. If anything, she looked calm. Almost as if she had expected him to come here. You wanted answers, she said, stepping into the room. Now you have them. Ethan's mind raced. This mural, that's me, isn't it? The Empress studied him for a moment, then nodded. It is. A prophecy. Ethan blinked. A prophecy. About me. She tilted her head. Not exactly. Ethan crossed his arms. You want to be a little less cryptic. The Empress approached the mural, her fingers tracing the glowing symbols. Long ago, it was foretold that a human would come to my world, a human who would stand by my side in a time of great darkness. Ethan felt a chill crawl down his spine. And you think that's me? She turned to him, studying him carefully. I do not know. Ethan laughed, a short, nervous laugh. Great. Love that confidence. The Empress took a slow step forward. But I do know this. Your arrival is no accident. Ethan's pulse quickened. What do you mean? She gazed at him, something unreadable in her golden eyes. There are forces in this galaxy that move unseen. They have guided you here for a reason. Ethan's stomach twisted. And what happens if I don't want to be part of this? The Empress's voice was quiet but firm. You already are. A new threat. Before Ethan could respond, a loud explosion rocked the palace. Alarms blared. The ground shook violently. The Empress's eyes darkened. They are here. Ethan's blood turned to ice. Who? She turned to him, her expression unreadable. The ones who want to kill you. Ethan's heart stopped. Growing feelings. Ethan barely had time to react before another explosion shook the palace. Guards rushed past him, their armor glowing as they activated energy shields. The air smelled of burning metal and ozone, and somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. Ethan turned to the Empress. She didn't move. Her golden eyes remained fixed on the doors, her expression unreadable. Was she calm? Okay, not to freak anyone out, Ethan said, forcing a laugh. But I'm pretty sure explosions are bad. The Empress finally looked at him. They have come sooner than I expected. Ethan blinked. Who? You keep saying they, but I'd really love some specifics before I get vaporized. Before she could answer, the doors burst open, and General Varric strode in, his armor stained with smoke and his sword drawn. They've breached the outer walls, my Empress, he said, his voice tight. The Shadowborn are here. Ethan froze. The who now? Varric barely spared him a glance. You should be preparing for battle, human. Ethan gestured wildly. Yeah, see, that's the thing. I don't do battles. You saw me in training. I'm about as useful as a broken toaster. Varric ignored him, turning back to the Empress. Do we engage? The Empress nodded. Hold the palace gates. I will handle the rest. Varric bowed deeply, then shot one final glare at Ethan before leaving. Ethan swallowed hard. Okay, so just to clarify, we're in the middle of an alien war. I might be part of some ancient prophecy, and now there's something called Shadowborn trying to kill me. The Empress tilted her head. You learned quickly. Ethan groaned. The escape plan. Before he could argue, the Empress grabbed his arm and pulled him through a hidden corridor behind the throne. Her grip was strong, but not painful. Warm. Steady. It sent a strange shiver down Ethan's spine. Where are we going? He asked as they moved deeper underground. To safety. Ethan frowned. Wait. You're the Empress. Shouldn't you be out there fighting with your people? She didn't stop walking. A war is not won by strength alone. It is won by strategy. Ethan blinked. Okay, Sun Tzu, but what's the actual strategy? She didn't answer. Instead, they emerged in a vast underground hangar where sleek alien ships were lined up in perfect formation. Ethan's eyes widened. "You're planning to run." The Empress turned to him, her golden gaze flickering in the dim light. "Would you prefer to die here?" Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it. Fair point. A moment of truth. As she moved toward a small but heavily armored ship, Ethan couldn't stop staring at her. She was so composed, even now, when everything was falling apart around her. He wasn't sure if it was admirable or terrifying. Then, without thinking, he asked, "Why did you accept my proposal?" The Empress paused. Ethan immediately regretted it. But instead of brushing him off, she slowly turned back to him. "There is a law among my people," she said. "The Empress must always choose her mate." Ethan frowned. "Okay, but you barely know me." Her gaze softened, just slightly. "Perhaps that is why I chose you." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "That doesn't make sense." She took a step closer. "Doesn't it?" Ethan suddenly felt warm all over. The alarms were still blaring. Soldiers were fighting. Explosions rumbled above them. And yet, for some reason, none of that mattered in this moment. She was looking at him, not as an empress, not as a ruler, but as someone searching for something real. Ethan swallowed hard. I don't know what to say." She gave him a small, knowing smile. "Then say nothing." And before Ethan could process what was happening, she turned and entered the ship. Ethan let out a shaky breath, staring after her. For the first time since he arrived here, he didn't feel like a prisoner. He felt like something more. And that scared him more than anything else. A dangerous threat. Ethan had barely strapped himself into the co-pilot's seat when the ship lurched violently, blasting out of the hidden underground hangar. The moment they hit the sky, chaos surrounded them. Explosions ripped through the night. Massive warships hovered above the palace, their weapons raining fire onto the golden towers below. Fighters weaved through the air, locked in desperate dogfights. Ethan gripped the controls instinctively. "Okay, so what's the plan?" The Empress sat beside him, completely calm, as if they weren't flying straight into a battlefield. "The plan," she said, adjusting the ship's trajectory, "is survival." Ethan groaned. "Awesome. Love that." The Shadowborn revealed themselves. As they dodged through the chaos, Ethan finally saw them. The Shadowborn. Their ships were black as void, almost invisible against the night sky, except for the eerie red markings that pulsed across their hulls like living veins. Then a voice crackled through the ship's communicator. "You cannot run, Empress." The Empress's fingers tightened on the controls. "They found us." Ethan shivered. The voice was wrong, distorted, hollow, like it was coming from something that wasn't quite alive. Another message followed, colder this time. "And the human belongs to us." Ethan's stomach dropped. "What?" No, I belong to me, thanks." The Empress didn't hesitate. She flipped a series of glowing switches, and suddenly, the ship rocketed forward, narrowly dodging a barrage of plasma fire. Ethan clenched his teeth. "Okay, who are these guys? And why do they sound like a haunted refrigerator?" The Empress's eyes remained focused ahead. "They are the ones who have been waiting for you." Ethan felt a chill crawl up his spine. "Waiting for me? Why?" The Empress didn't answer, and that scared him more than anything. Nowhere left to run. More Shadowborn ships closed in fast. Ethan's hands hovered over the controls. "Look, I'm a decent pilot, but this ship is way more advanced than anything I've ever flown." The Empress cut him off. "Then you will learn quickly." She suddenly released the controls. Ethan's heart stopped. "Wait, WHAT. Fly." Ethan panicked. ICANT-JUST. "Fly, Ethan." The moment she said his name, something clicked inside him. Without thinking, his hands moved. The ship twisted sharply, dodging another round of incoming fire. His heart pounded. How did he know what to do? The Empress studied him, her golden eyes burning with realization. "You feel it, don't you?" she whispered. Ethan didn't answer. He couldn't. Because she was right. The ship responded to him like it was alive. Like it had been waiting for him. The truth comes out. Ethan's mind raced. The Shadowborn were after him. The Empress had expected him. The prophecy mentioned a human standing beside her. This wasn't random. He turned to her, breathless. "You knew this would happen." The Empress didn't deny it. "I suspected," she admitted. "But now I am certain." Ethan swallowed hard. Certain of what? She hesitated, then spoke the words that changed everything. "You are not the first human to come here." Ethan's blood ran cold. "What?" "The prophecy speaks of a human who will stand beside the Empress," she continued. "But it was written long before you were born. Long before your people even knew of the stars." Ethan's chest tightened. "So then, what happened to the last human?" The Empress's golden eyes darkened. "They failed." Ethan's hands shook on the controls. And then, through the comms, the Shadowborn voice returned. "You will fail too." Ethan had never been more terrified in his life. The final battle begins. The Shadowborn ships suddenly broke formation, moving in perfect synchronization. Ethan didn't know why, until he looked at the radar. A massive warship was descending from the clouds, bigger than anything he had ever seen, and it was coming straight for them. The Empress's expression hardened. "This is it." Ethan's hands gripped the controls. His entire body screamed at him to run. But something inside him told him that wasn't an option anymore. He wasn't just a pilot. He wasn't just some lost human. And whatever was about to happen next would decide everything. The final decision. The Shadowborn warship descended like a god of death, blotting out the sky. Ethan's grip tightened on the controls, his pulse hammering in his ears. This was it. No more running. No more questions. Just one final fight. The Empress sat beside him, calm as ever, golden eyes locked on the approaching enemy. "This is where you choose, Ethan." He swallowed hard. "Choose what?" She turned to him, and for the first time, he saw something rare in her gaze. "Hope. You must decide. Will you stand beside me, or will you run?" Ethan felt his chest tighten. Because deep down, he already knew the answer. He just wasn't sure if he could live with it. The final battle. The Shadowborn opened fire. Ethan jerked the ship sideways, barely dodging a blast that could have turned them into dust. His hands moved on instinct, weaving through the chaos. The ship responded like it was an extension of his own body, like it knew him, like it had been waiting for him. The Empress watched him carefully. "You were meant for this." Ethan gritted his teeth. "Yeah. Well, I didn't exactly sign up for it." Another enemy ship swooped down, weapons locking onto them. Ethan pushed the throttle forward, twisting through a tight corkscrew maneuver. The enemy's blast missed by inches. The Empress didn't flinch. "Then why are you still here?" Ethan's breath caught. He wanted to argue, to say he had no choice. But the truth was, he did. And yet, he hadn't left. The truth about the prophecy. The Shadowborn ship loomed closer, its cannons charging. Ethan's mind raced. They needed a plan. He turned to the Empress. "If I really am part of this prophecy, what does it actually say? How do we win this?" She was silent for a moment. Then, softly, she said, "The prophecy never said we win." Ethan felt his stomach drop. "What?" "The human who stands with the Empress will change the fate of the Empire," she said, but it never promised victory. Ethan's heart pounded. So this could all be for nothing. The Empress met his gaze, unshaken, unafraid. "If we do nothing," she said, "we already lose." Ethan stared at her. She wasn't fighting for a prophecy. She wasn't even fighting for herself. She was fighting because it was the right thing to do. And suddenly, Ethan understood. He had spent his whole life drifting, taking jobs, barely scraping by. never choosing anything. But now he had a chance to be something more, to fight, to stand for something, and maybe, just maybe, to stand for her. A final gamble. The Shadowborn ship locked onto them. No escape, no second chances. Ethan took a deep breath. Then, against all logic, he pushed the ship forward, straight at the enemy. The Empress's eyes widened. "Ethan, trust me." For the first time, she hesitated. Then she nodded. Ethan grinned. Then he hit the thrusters at full speed. Impact. The Shadowborn ship didn't expect them to charge. Ethan twisted the controls at the last second, spinning their ship in a tight spiral, barely missing the enemy's hull. And that's when the Empress acted. She extended her hand, and a wave of pure energy erupted from her fingertips, tearing through the Shadowborn shields. The massive warship shuddered. Cracks formed across its dark surface. Ethan's eyes widened. What did you just? The Empress's golden eyes glowed with power. I ended this. And with that, the Shadowborn ship collapsed in on itself, swallowed by a black void, gone forever. The aftermath. Silence. Then, cheers erupted over the comms. The enemy was gone. The battle was over. Ethan let out a shaky breath, barely believing what had just happened. He turned to the Empress, laughing in sheer disbelief. "So, does this mean we won?" She smiled, a real, genuine smile. "It means we live." Ethan exhaled deeply, sinking back into his seat. Good enough for me. The final decision. Back at the palace, the city rejoiced. But Ethan stood on the balcony, staring at the stars. The war might have been over, but his choice still remained. The Empress walked up beside him, quiet. "You can leave now," she said softly. Ethan looked at her. "Is that what you want?" She didn't answer. Instead, she turned to face him fully. "This was never about fate, Ethan," she said. "You were never forced to stay. You always had a choice." Ethan swallowed hard. He could walk away, go back to his old life, forget everything. But the truth was, he didn't want to. Because when he looked at her, really looked at her, he knew. He was already hers. Ethan took a slow step forward, then another, and finally, he made his choice. He reached for her hand. And this time, he meant it.